Number one is a good diet. You are what you eat, or literally what you eat becomes you. So eat the best brain foods ever. Number two is killing ants. Killing ants is actually clinically proven to unlock your potential. ANTS stands for automatic negative thoughts. Because the truth is, yes, you are what you eat, but you are also your thoughts. And so you want to keep them positive, you want to keep them encouraging. There are studies that suggest that pessimists are more accurate, they're right more often, but optimists achieve a lot more. And think about it, because pessimists are really risk adverse, so they play it safe, and so they're not getting as much done and accomplished, but optimists are taking more risks, and with those risks come rewards. But when it comes to getting rid of negative thoughts, what I would tell people is this, is remember magic. Use your magic. Abra. A-B-R-A. Remember abracadabra? Abracadabra is all about taking words and changing things with transformational words. So if you have a negative talk, negative self-talk, and negative limiting belief, what I want you to do, 4 simple things. The A in Abra says acknowledge. You acknowledge that. So maybe you say something like, oh, I'm just too old, or oh, I'm just, this doesn't run in my family, or oh, I'm just not smart enough or good enough. Acknowledge it, don't resist it. Because if you fight it, what you resist persists. So just acknowledge it. The B in Abra stands for breathe. It stands for breath. Because what you do is you breathe in, and when I'm breathing, I'm visualizing. We're talking about breath and visualization. I breathe in potential. I breathe in intelligence. I breathe in limitless. And I breathe into the place in my body, whether it's pain I'm suffering from, or struggling with, or an idea in my mind. I breathe into that space. And then the R in Abra is I release. I release. I release that negative thought, that automatic negative thought. I release that pain. I release limits out. And finally, the last A in Abra stands for align. Align. I reset. I do zero base. Like, what's the opposite of what I was feeling? Or what's the opposite of what I was saying to myself? What's my true fullest potential? And I align more to my true nature. Another thing you could do to maximize your potential are supplements, nutrients, especially when it comes to your brain. You can do all the techniques, but if you're deficient in DHAs, omegas, your B vitamins, it's going to affect your performance. So if you're not getting the best diet, you could supplement. Another thing you could do to be able to unlock your full potential is exercise, right? So exercise is really good for the brain. As your body moves, your brain grooves. A lot of people don't know this, but the primary function of our brain is to control our movement. And here's what the latest science is saying, is just there's not only just a brain-body connection, there's a body-brain connection. The challenge is we're so sedentary all the time, right? We live in a very sedentary culture. They say sitting is the new smoking. And I encourage people to take brain breaks. The Pomodoro technique says that our focus, we can only maintain high focus for about 25 minutes. After that, there's a sharp decline. And so what I do is I set an alarm to go off every 25 to 30 minutes, maybe an hour tops. And then what I do is I take a little brain break, a 5-minute brain break to do 3 things. Number 1, I hydrate. Number 2, I do deep breathing. And the third thing I do is I move. As your body moves, your brain grooves. Number 5 is a positive peer group. Positive peer group is really key to living your full potential because you are who you spend time with. Literally, who you spend time with is who you become. After that, I would say a clean environment. Clean environment is really good for your brain, for you living your fullest potential, because you know this. If you ever clean your desk or your laptop, don't you have more sharpness? Don't you have clarity of thought? So a clean environment is reflective of clarity of thought. Number 7 is sleep. You need sleep, especially for your mental performance, for 2 reasons. Number 1 is where you consolidate short to long-term memory. That's really key. You need to consolidate short to long memory. That happens when you sleep. Number 2, though, is where you're cleaning out the plaque that leads to dementia and Alzheimer's. Actually, when you sleep is when you're actually doing that. And then the third reason, a bonus reason, is it's when you dream. The 8th key, another key to unlocking your full potential, is to protect your brain. What do I mean? Wear a helmet. Your brain, coming from somebody who's had many traumatic brain injuries, fallen off roofs, headfirst into radiators, your brain is resilient, but it's also very fragile. So with you and your kids, avoid the extreme sports, wear a helmet, wear your seatbelt, all those things to protect your brain. The next key for unlocking your full mental potential is new learnings. Commit yourself to lifelong learnings. There was a study done on super nuns. It was on the cover of Time magazine, and they wanted to find out how these women were living 80, 90, and above in age. And they found out half of it had to do with their gratitude, going back to gratitude and faith. The other half, though, had to do with they were lifelong learners. They were committed to lifelong learning, learning every single day. Because we've discovered more about the human brain more in the past 20 years than the previous 2,000 years. When studies done on neurogenesis and neuroplasticity, neurogenesis says, neuro meaning the brain, genesis meaning birth, you could give birth to new brain cells to the day you die. Neuroplasticity, this is really exciting, says that your brain is like plastic in a positive way, meaning it's very malleable, that having a new thought creates new connections. So for example, Einstein's brain wasn't any bigger than anybody else's. If anything, it's smaller. But there are certain parts of his brain that are extremely dense because he wired his brain through his what he called thought experiments. He would visualize himself riding a beam of light, looking at something and wondering what that thing would look like going at light speed. He would do these thought experiments. He's the one that said imagination is more powerful than knowledge, because knowledge is what is, but imagination is what things could be. So commit yourself to lifelong learning, and what stimulates neurogenesis and neuroplasticity? Two things: novelty and nutrition. Novelty and nutrition. It's just like if you want to build your physical muscles. If you want to build a muscle, you give it novelty, you work it out, you give it exercise, and then you give it nutrients to feed it. Same thing with your mental muscles. Give it novelty, new things, and then give it the nutrients it needs to develop. And finally, the last key for unlocking your full mental potential is stress management. And this is a huge one because a lot of people, because we live in such stressed lives, we're like fish, we don't see the water because we're in the water all the time, and we are living in that sympathetic state. And it's so important for your brain to downregulate, to spend time in those parasympathetic places where you rest and you recover and you restore. So in terms of stress management, what kind of practices do we have? Whether it's massage, for me, it's meditation. So meditation is a very powerful way. When you meditate, you go into this brainwave state called alpha. Alpha state is the state of a relaxed awareness. And relaxed awareness is where you could train yourself actually to learn a language faster, to be able to learn rapidly because your conscious mind is actually set aside and you just absorb information faster. You know what puts you into an alpha state is TV, television. They call it television programming for a reason. And you know this because if you've ever seen somebody so enthralled with a TV show or a sporting event and you're trying to talk to them or have a conversation and they're just in trance, literally they don't hear you, it's because their conscious mind is set aside and they're just absorbing what's in front of them. And there are many ways to get into an alpha state by design. And I would recommend use all three learning styles: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. So when you visualize things and you exercise your imagination, it actually puts you into an alpha state, a relaxed state of awareness. And even if you can't imagine something when you're imagining, just imagine you can imagine it, right? The auditory part is music. Certain sounds like nature sounds will put you into an alpha state. Certain sounds like classical music, especially Baroque classical music, Vivaldi, Handel, because it's 60 beats per minute and it harmonizes with the resting heart rate. So 60 beats per minute Baroque music will help put you into a meditative alpha state. And finally, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Kinesthetic, I would say deep breathing, deep diaphragmatic conscious breathing. And even when you're not meditating, a lot of people have bad posture. And when they're reading something and they're studying, you can't live your full potential if you're crouched down like this, because when you have poor posture, you collapse your lungs, right? And the lower 1/3 of your lungs absorbs 2/3 of the oxygen. And what's most important is that oxygen gets to your brain. So if you suffer from mental fatigue or brain fog, the number one thing you could do is do deep diaphragmatic